Rick, can you advance or? I sent you some pictures of some projects that we already started. We always like to get a jump on it if we can. And we've started a few projects inside. They came out pretty nice. I don't know if you saw the picture of Riverview, the inside. Did you guys see that? It's like brand new, right? It looks great. And the sidewalk was cracked, so that's replaced. The apron at Riverview, if you ever drove in there, it's real bumpy, so that's been replaced. Lakeview, we did some masonry work too to make it a little safer for the kids walking in the parking lot. We took out that old planter that was there that wasn't really being used, and now the kids can walk directly from one door to the other rather than having to go into the parking lot, which has a fairly decent amount of traffic. So there's a few projects that we've been already working on in there. We have budget for new personnel and some continuing needs. So we have an additional teacher for the elementary schools for next year when we go up one section. We have budgets in there for the nurses to increase to full time, and working on some things with in special ed program, bringing our PT in-house, continuing our behavioral program, and all the benefits for those positions as well. Next slide is
Dr. Forte, just
yes.
Real quick. Sorry, we have somebody joining the meeting, so I just want to make sure everybody knew if you come on. We're doing our presentation, which is on our website, denville.org, Board of Education link, and then business budgets. If you go to there and then you click on the 2022-2023 final budget presentation, that is what Dr. Forte is currently presenting. Thank you. Sorry.
Excellent. So we have some personnel. We continue our program with St. Clair's. That's something that I see a need for continuing for the near future. We have budget items in there for curriculum, different novels in the 6th and 7th grade, additional books for new sections, a new program called Amplify Science, continue at Reflex Math, some replacement textbooks, wood shop supplies. That's the program for the summer, and our gifted and talented program. And then we also have money on that bottom line for the strategic plan, the communications consultant to continue, out of district, an additional out of district student, and increase to the free lunch program. That seems to be a need right now. Am I correct, Damaris, that there's been more children? Actually, the cost has gone up too. The number of children isn't going up substantially, but the cost of the lunches are. Am I accurate on that?
That is correct. The number of students increased by a little bit. The margin is very small. However, the cost of the food and milk has increased drastically from 2020.
So there's an increase there. But just so you are all aware, every time we talk about this, we always tell our people, if there's anybody who qualifies, don't try to skimp on it. Whatever it is, we'll take care of it. And I know that's been the feeling of the board since I've been gone, since I've been employed here for the last 8 years. When I brought this to the board's attention at the time that the schools were providing lunches for somewhere around 60 kids at the time, and it was not really part of the mission of the individual school that doesn't even have a kitchen to provide meals. And we decided to have this taken over by the Board of Education office, and Damaris found vendors for it. So it's been working pretty good so far, I think, right?
Yes, we have, and the PTA has helped tremendously as well too. Between our research and their help, the program is working really well.
So here's our budget breakdown. We always say discretionary versus non-discretionary. So the discretionary items are the things that we don't, that we do have control over. So pretty much you can look at that pie. Now that does include personnel too. So it's everything that we have. And the other things are the things that we can control. Like we don't have to do some of the projects we said. We don't have to replace flooring. We don't have to replace sidewalks, but the board and the administration has taken it upon ourselves for years now to continue the programs and improve the facilities. Also professional development. Some of that isn't required, some is. So those are, as you can see, 92.4% of the money in the budget does go towards non-discretionary items. So this next slide shows you where does the money go. So the green, I mean, the big blue section and the red section is personnel, salaries and benefits. And then the other smaller section is capital projects and leases. And then you have all those little pieces all together. So you could see it's somewhere, salary and benefits is something like 80% of the budget, somewhere around there. Next slide goes through our budget categories: instruction, special education, basic skills. This is the way that we have to report it. This is nothing fancy, right, Tamara? It's just the way that the budget software requires that the categories we create.
Correct. The category has to be lumped into certain ways and have to be reported this way.
And then the next slide. This is the slide that tells all the individual lines where does the money come from, where does it go. So this is all the different funding mechanisms, and you could see that out of $37 million, $32.7 million is coming from the local taxpayers. I have a slide about that too in a minute, so we're going to get a little bit deeper into that. So our next slide is the tax budget impact for 22-23. Now, for the Denville pre-K to 8 schools only, not including any other taxes like county or state or local or any of those, or even the other boards of ed that we have to pay for, our change on the average house, which is valued at $409,000, is a $70 increase and a 1.84% difference in the taxes from last year to this year. I'm sorry, from this year to next year. And then this slide is something that we just started this year. Historical tax levy and aid from the School Funding Reform Act of 2008 and S2, which was in 2018. The reason why I think this is important is that we spent some time on this and we advocated for S2. What S2 did was it reminded the state that you're supposed to fund schools the way you said you were going to fund them in 2008, and they only did it one time. So the state only funded school districts like ours, suburban districts, where most of the money comes from the local taxpayers, fully funded it only one time in 2010. And since then, they have not. Now, slowly, they're giving it back, and that's what this slide shows. Now, I made the scale small to show the difference because it's not a huge difference, but at least it's starting. If you notice in 1920, 92.5% of our budget, actually more than that, around 93% of our budget came from the local taxpayers. And this year it's gone down to around 91.5. So we've changed it a little bit, and that's a good thing. We're starting to see more money coming from the state, which is going to help offset the taxes for the local taxpayers in our district. And this board and administration determined that we would give back almost all of the new funding. There was a kind of a last minute thing that the board felt was important to increase the school nurses to full-time, and each school would have 2 full-time nurses. And that did require us to take a little bit of the new state aid, but we used all the rest of it for local tax relief. And Damaris, would you mind giving out that exact numbers on that? We got how much additional state aid this year?
$464,000 additional state aid.
And how much did we use for local tax relief?
It was about, I don't have a number in front of me, but it was 75%.
Can you just take a minute and I'll come back to you? Okay, then the next slide, Ricky, we'll come back to that last thing. I didn't want to put you on the spot for it, but I know we could figure it out close to the number, I think. Lakeview, just a few pictures from Lakeview. It's good to see that we're back, right? We had the second grade musical in person. It was really nice to see that. We had our talent show at Lakeview again. Veterans Day. These are things that were really near and dear to the district and the community. and were put on hold for the most part due to COVID and moved to a virtual form. And now we were able to bring these things back. And I just wanted to highlight some of the good things that we're doing again. It just, even though there are things we already did, it's just nice to remind everybody that we're doing these things again. And then at Riverview, I took a picture when we had the flood. I think it was called was that Irma, Hurricane Irma over the summer, something like that? I don't remember the name of it. The hurricane that happened in August that caused the flooding behind Riverview. We did a project, a waterproofing project, to help with it. It's going to manage the water. If you take a look at that picture, right, like you see how the water's coming up the wall there. We can't keep the water from going into the school in that spot. Now that's a storage area, and everything's lifted off the ground, so it's not like it's a instructional space, but we blocked up some of the wall. Like you can see, there's a second door. The far side, there's a second door. So that's now blocked and waterproofed. And now we manage the water when it comes in with a system of pumps. So the water still has to come in. There's no way to keep it out. But we move the water to a different spot, and it's helping so far, because we had another flood last week and we didn't have any issues in there. Then I have a picture of our Veterans Day program at Riverview and a picture of the sensory room at Riverview as well. At Valley View, that cafeteria mural, I don't know if you guys have been in there yet. Is anybody in there? You've been in there, right? Looks great, right? I love the town. Like you pretty much like walking downtown, right? You see the clock, you see like downtown Denville. It's really, I thought it was great the way it came out. That picture doesn't do it justice. That was a picture taken in the middle of it. And then our boys and girls soccer teams both won. I only had a team picture of the boys. I had a couple individual shots of the girls, but I just put one picture there. Then I had our field ribbon cutting ceremony that we attended. And then just go to the next page. We're still advocating. Like, this is a picture of me with a group of Morris County superintendents who met with three of our local legislators. It's Senators Panaccio and Bucco and Assemblywoman Ora Dunn. And that's a group of our local administrators from Parsippany, Montville, Jefferson, and so on. And I shared with you the white paper that Dr. Barbara Sargent and I wrote. I don't know if you guys got a chance to look at it, but it was just kind of a plug for some kind of way to use virtual for an emergency. Maybe not even snow. Like, it would have been great to be able to use a virtual day, the day I had to close Lakeview because of the power. If we could have moved it to a virtual day, that would have been a great example of how to use it. Or, there's no heat in a building or whatever else. Right now, we don't have a mechanism in place for that. The school has to be closed for 3 days in a row and has to be a state of emergency. So we can't use a virtual day for anything right now unless it meets those two criteria: 3 days and a state of emergency. So that paper was really plugging for two things. One, that we would like to have the ability to do it. Maybe like there's some kind of approval process. We might have to go to the county superintendent, something like that. And then the other part was that we're not pushing for the ability for parents to select in person or virtual unless the state creates something similar to what they do in Florida, and they have a virtual school that's run by the state. And if the state wants to do that, great. So it seemed like a pretty fruitful meeting. And the three legislators that were there were very receptive, and they wanted to book other meetings with us. I was pretty happy with the way they responded to us. So, a lot of times this group that you see standing there, we all look at each other like, why did they pass this? Like, why didn't they just ask a few of us if this is something that's doable or, something like that? So that's one of the things that we're going to do with this group. We're going to meet 2 to 3 times a year, and they're going to use us as a sounding board for some of this. So I think it's a valuable group. Damaris, any update on that?
We received from the state aid $464,000 of increase from last year, from 21-22, which is the current year. And we used $155,000 towards some personnel that we needed, and the rest was for tax relief.
And then we always do these slides. Next slide. This slide, it wasn't updated yet, so the data hasn't been published, so I couldn't get new data. So this is a couple years old, but you can see where we fit into our comparison group. We're typically on the low end of the budget, like we're 3 from the bottom. So this is our group that we've been using for since I've been here. It's all districts that fit these criteria. They have to be between Central and North Jersey. We didn't include way down South Jersey. So it's basically Somerset County through Bergen County. They have to have between 1,000 and 3,000 kids. They have to have been identified as a district factor group I, which is something that the state did in 2000 was the last time. And they categorized all the districts based on demographic data into categories. J is the most wealthy. I is the next to the most wealthy. But there is if you look at the group of districts that fit into that, there's a pretty big range within the group, right? Like we're in with Franklin Lakes, and Denville's in with Franklin Lakes, and Franklin Lakes median home price is around $1 million, and ours is around 400,000. So even though they're in the same grouping, there's a pretty big discrepancy within the grouping. But it's still like this is our league, if you want to put it that way. And then it's only K-8 districts because it's hard to compare high school districts to K-8. So those are all the districts, and that's how our budget per pupil cost matches up to the other groups that we compare ourselves to. And again, I'm keeping this in there because I know you're used to it, but the data is not available because there's no comparison yet, because the first time back with NJSLA will be this year. So there's no way to do a comparison. So this is what we were a few years ago. I like to look at how we are succeeding against this group and point out some demographic factors, like how are we doing? How do we do in reading and writing and math? And compare us to districts that have a higher percentage of college graduates in the town. Like, for example, our town at the time had around 49%, but some of the other districts are in the 60, 66%. So some of that data, the interesting thing is that we're still competing fairly well with the groups with a higher amount of people that have gone to college in their demographics. So it's not a real useful tool this year because it's a couple years old. It will be updated once we have the data from this school year. So that won't happen until next year. But I kept it in there just so that we can remember that we've been doing that. And then the last slide, and then I'll take any questions you might have. Did you know? So the S2 legislation was passed in 2018, and the Board of Education advocated for the passage. And I would say right now I'm kind of optimistic that they're holding tight with it. I think you guys have seen that. It's better than I thought. I know they appropriated $50 million. It's a lot of money, $50 million to try to make some of those districts whole where the money was taken from overfunded districts and giving it back to districts like us. But at least right now, it looks like that's staying. We have the sensory gyms in each school. We have a teacher for gifted and talented now. We have we've increased our classroom libraries by more than 20%, and that's help us include some more diverse and inclusive titles. This budget includes some electrical service upgrade for Lakeview to include new HVAC for including air conditioning in large areas. That would be the last building in the district to finalize the large area air conditioning. The reason why we did it the way we did it, some of you were new, so you don't know this, but a few years ago, Valley View needed a new system. So that was the first one we did because it needed new heat too. The second one was Riverview because Riverview was also on its last legs. It needed to be replaced. And while we're replacing the heat, it made sense to add the air. The one at Lakeview, the HVAC for the heat is okay, but now it has to be upgraded. So that's how we did it. The reason we did it and in the order we did. I also like to point out that We're doing some HVAC projects at Valley View. In the Valley View cafeteria, there's air conditioning there now, but it is one of our older units. It's actually something like 30 years old, so it's on its last legs. It's time to upgrade. And Damaris was able to get a grant for $500,000 to make these upgrades in the Valley View cafeteria and the art and music rooms. We continue our behavioral services programs with St. Clair's. That's a really important thing. I can't say enough about how that's been helping, especially in these difficult times that we're going through. And it does include increases in funds for lunches for our economically disadvantaged students. And just a reminder, we did continue our lunch program all through COVID with no interruptions. Am I right? No interruptions
That
from
is
the
correct.
beginning, right away, with delivered lunches to all the students that were qualified. And that's the end of my presentation, and I am fine to take any questions if you might have any.
Anyone have questions for Dr. Forte?
I get it's kind of anticlimactic because we've already talked about it, voted on it, right? But now I'm doing it again. But I just figure I'll throw it out if you have a question.
Can I just ask one quick question, Damaris? In regards to the slide 13, which is budget tax impact, I know the tax impact is different than the budget increase, right? And we talked about that. There's two different things. There's a calendarization.
Correct.
And then there's also, which I think adds more to it than even the calendarization, which is the assessed value of the town, correct? Because if I'm looking at this correctly, from 2021, 2022 to 2022, 2023, so into this year, the town lost somewhere around almost $23 million worth of valuation. Is that correct?
The evaluation went down from last year, and that impacted the tax impact to the taxpayer. The higher the evaluation, the less the taxpayer impact. This is a different, it went the opposite way. Not only that, this is only the K through 8 tax impact. This would not be the final impact to the entire residents. This is only our portion. And again, like you mentioned, also the fiscal versus calendar year also has an impact on the tax, residents' tax impact.
Got it. And I think that's important to just note that, you know, if we look and correct, what was the percentage of the budget increase again?
0.75.
0.75 versus 1.64 is the difference, right? So 0.75 is how much we increased the budget versus last year. But because of the two factors that you just mentioned, the tax impact is 1.64 for our piece of the pie, correct?
That is correct.
There was something, I don't know exactly, but there was a fairly large increase with no increase to our budget. It was somewhere around $40 or $50, even if the budget was flat due to the reassessment, right, Damaris?
Because of the reassessment, even if the budget was zero increase, the tax impact would still be similar to last year, if not a little higher. Very similar.
And I guess that's primarily due to reassessment or fighting of valuations for certain individuals, whether they be residential or commercial, correct?
That is correct.
So
All right, thank you, everybody. Oh, sorry.
another
Go
quick
ahead. Go ahead.
question, non-budgetary. I like the comparison to the other school districts, K through 8. Don't know if I'd seen that before, but it'll be something that we can dig into a little bit deeper. The Placer County district seems to have slightly better than us, but we are doing pretty good in the top, I'd say 2 or 3 in terms of ELA, math, and other things. Am I reading it correctly in that? It's a last but one slide.
If you look at the bottom in yellow, you can see where we ranked in each one.
Yeah.
So our math numbers, we fit into the 7th out of the 12, but then like, we're sixth, we're second, median income, we're 9.
Yep.
The reason why I put those statistics is there is a correlation in SAT scores from the wealth of the town to the actual score. It's almost a direct relation. Yes.
And that compared to the previous slide where per pupil budget, I know that's 2 years old, but they are also slightly better than us in terms of, they are the lowest in terms of per pupil 2019, 2020.
There's 2 districts that were lower than us in that, and then the rest were above us, and they are Bergen districts. And it's important to understand what this is the comparative budgeted per pupil. The reason why they do that is because not all districts have transportation. So like for us, we have transportation. If you added that cost in, it would be unfair to compare us to a walking district when we bus every kid. So some of the things that aren't like universal, they're removed.
Okay, that makes sense. Those are really interesting data to dig into.
Yeah, we've used, so Steve brought this kind of put this comparison group together, and we've used it for all sorts of different things, budgeting, test scores. We've used it for quite a few different comparisons, which I agree with you. It's really beneficial to me to see, because a lot of times you hear a comparison to MHRD, but you can't compare to a high school only district. You can't compare to a Morristown that has, K through 12, and everybody's a little different. So I think that this is the best way to get similar size, similar socioeconomic factors, and locality, same thing, because you can compare a district way down in Salem County and it's significantly different. So I find it valuable too, and hopefully, I know it becomes a little bit harder because, like Steve said, the district factor groups, which was our socioeconomic, that hasn't been updated in 20 years. The good or bad of that is probably the socioeconomic conditions haven't significantly changed in at least the towns we're looking at. Could somebody have jumped in or out? Maybe, but generally speaking, they're pretty similar, the same, I would imagine. So,
Dr. Forte, if we were to redo those slides, you mentioned that there's like delays in the data, like SLA scores, this will be the first year or something. When would we see like an updated version? So once we get the SLA scores and all the other numbers, I mean, would we be like another year? Like, would we be able to see a slide updated next year or year after?
Yeah, it would definitely be ready by this time next year. It might be ready a little bit earlier. The problem is they don't make the data public right away. Like, you get your own scores, but you don't get the public. Like, it's not public, and then it becomes public. So definitely by budget time next year, because normally I update this like in March. So by budget time next year, we'll have this. I know it's something that a lot of you look forward to, especially the ones that like statistics and things like that. I get it. And I kind of figured Vino was going to be on that too, but it's just not valuable data right now to compare, because there's nothing to compare, because there's no test scores. And once we have the test scores this time, it'll be updated.
And the final comment I'll make, and I think I make this every year, Dino could probably attest. So slide number 10 shows the breakdown of benefits, salaries, and then obviously a significant other different categories. And Steve, like you mentioned earlier, 80% or ballpark figure represents salaries and benefits. Both those categories typically go up greater than 2%. And greater than 0.75, because that's what we're increasing our budget by. So it is it's a struggle every year, and I appreciate the work that Damaris, the finance committee, and the business office and Dr. Forte put in to making sure that, there's a reason why salaries and benefits are that large. They're the most important piece of our entire district. We have the right people in place. We're giving the right benefits. They stay here. They're focused on doing the right thing for our students. But obviously those costs come into play. So it's always it was a marvel to me at the beginning when I was a first new board member. I'm like, how do you do this? But it really is kind of a sophisticated game of making sure we're doing all the right things and moving the right pieces around and saving in certain places, adding revenue where we can, and making sure we're providing everything we can for our students. So appreciate all the work that goes in.
Thank you.
Right. I will give you a second to get collected, Dr. Forte. We'll skip over to business administrator comments, Damaris, if you don't mind, and then we'll come back to Dr. Forte.
Not at all. I have one comment. Today, I did email everybody in reference to the New Jersey School Board Association. They're having a weekend leadership program geared for board leadership and aspiring leaders. Seats are very limited. If you are interested, please let me know as soon as possible. They are only accepting 4 members per district, and it's for June 3rd to the 5th. Starts Friday night virtual and Saturday afternoon into Sunday. It will be a live class. Thank you.
Thank you, Damaris. And back to you, Dr. Forte, for superintendent's comments.
So I have my comments, and I also have Dr. Cullis. Dr. Cullis was on vacation, and she has not returned yet. She's en route, but she's not going to make the meeting, so I have her comments. But I'll start off with mine. The Valley View Field netting project has been completed. The Lakeview roof project has been completed. The Riverview HVAC punch list is still open a little bit. There's a few things to finish up there. Riverview Hall floor, sidewalk, and apron complete. Valley View and Lakeview masonry will be complete by the end of the week. The Denville Education Foundation golf outing is October 17, 2022. Again, reminder that our Persons of the Year survey is open until April 30th. We have 40 or 50 nominations in there, but we're always looking for more. And if you're around, baseball and softball are home tomorrow on the new field. Is there supposed to rain or is good weather tomorrow? 50-50. We'll see how we do. Hopefully we get it in, but the baseball and softball are home tomorrow. And don't forget the Valley View musical called High School Musical is May 20th and 21st. So that's going to be pretty cool. It's a 1-act play this year. It'll be a little shorter. It's about an hour and 15. And it'll be Friday, May 20th and Saturday, May 21st. And now on to Dr. Cullis's comments. Dr. Cullis would like to note that tomorrow's NJSLA testing starts tomorrow. Please check the assessment calendar on the district website for your child's specific testing dates. And we would like to remember a dear colleague who recently passed, Dr. Kathy Benedict, a dedicated 20 years of service to the Riverview School community. She continued to support our staff as a professor at Centenary College by providing supervision for student interns and professional development for teachers. She will be greatly missed. And that's the comments for the superintendent and assistant superintendent.
Thank you, Dr. Forte. We're going to move on to our first open public comment section. Seeing no one in the meeting room here, I'm going to open our comments at 8:09 p.m. and I'm going to hold off on reading the paragraphs since no one's here. I believe, Dr. Forte, we do have one comment that came in on the email. Do you want to read that?
It's up to you. It's a good thing if you want me to do it. I'm fine.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So from our middle school Valley View bio science teacher, Mrs. Carol Andrieza, she submitted just a comment. She wanted to make sure that we all knew that 8th grade student Mary Yap was selected as the winner of the NOAA Marine Debris Art Contest for grades K-8. The NOAA site says marine debris is a global issue, and we believe that engaging our youth is an important part of addressing the problem. Her artwork will be featured in the 2023 NOAA Marine Debris Calendar with other winners and can be viewed and downloaded there's a website. You all have access to this document. It's in the folder. If anybody has a problem getting it, you can just let me know and I'll send it to you. She even inserted a picture too. So let me see if I can blow this up a little bit. Well, I'll show you a little bit. It's a pretty nice drawing. I went on that website to look at the other ones. There's some really good drawings that make a lot of sense. I like her drawing that shows the life in the sea, and then the gray around it that shows all the debris. I thought she did a great job. And this is a national thing, and it's a pretty big honor for one of our students to be recognized in a national publication like this. So I thought it was important that we make sure we talk to her about it. So I'm glad that Ms. Andrieza took the time to send that comment in. That's the only comment I have right now.
Thank you, Dr. Forte. And congratulations to Mary Yap for being selected. Great job. I see no one else in the public here, so I'm going to close our first open public comment section at 8:11, and we'll move on to our agenda. Mr. Kim, would you mind moving us through old business?
Sure, I'll be happy to. Under section 3, old business, I motion that we approve tonight sections A, B, and C. A being the reports for March 2022. That includes the treasurer of school monies and the board secretary reports. Under B, education reports, I move numbers 1, 2, 3, and 5. We will return to approve number 4. So number 1 is the report of student enrollment for March 2022, the report of health office for March 2022, HIB case VV 2122.08, and skipping number 4 and going to number 5 of HIB case VV 2122.09, as well as under section C, minutes for the work session and executive session meetings on March 14th of 2022, as well as the regular session and the executive sessions 1 and 2 for March 28, 2022.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. Thank you, Mr. Cass. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Capello,
Yes.
Mr. Cass,
Yes.
Mr. Kim,
Yes.
Dr. Aruna Jatasan,
Yes.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes. And under new business, Dr. Moore, would you mind moving us through personnel?
Sure. I'd like to move for approval under Section 4, Personnel, number 1, which is involving cashing in vacation days and training, and items 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 for approval, if that's acceptable.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Thank you, Mr. Kim. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Capello,
Yes.
Mr. Cass,
Yes.
Mr. Kim,
Yes.
Dr. Aruna Jatasan,
Yes.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes. And under instruction and program, Mr. Capello, would you mind moving us through?
I'd be happy to. If there are no objections, under instruction and program, I'd like to move items 1 and 2. 1 includes workshop expenses for conventions, workshops and training. Number 2 is we're approving the purchase of the 2022 TCI Social Studies Alive digital and consumable print program for our K through 5 students.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Capello, and thank you, Mr. Kim. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Capello,
Yes.
Mr. Cass,
Yes.
Mr. Kim,
Yes.
Dr. Aruna Jatasan,
Yes.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes. And Mr. Cass, would you mind moving us through policy revisions?
Certainly. Under policy revisions, we have a number of policies up for second reading and adoption, and 2 items up for a first reading. So starting at the top, we have political activities, P3233. We have prevention and treatment of sports-related concussions and head injuries. That was B2431.4. And prevention and treatment of sports-related concussions and head injuries, that would be the regulation to support the policy, 2431.4. And then we have student surveys, analysis, evaluations, examinations, testing, or treatment, policy 2415.05. And we have administration of school surveys, policy 9560. We have student assessment, P2622. We have Regulation 2622 to support that policy. I have anti-hazing, P5541. Bias crimes and bias-related acts policy, 8465, Regulation 8465 to support it. And then for the first reading, we have political activities, and this one is to outline requirements for administrative staff. The first one was for teachers. And then we have P5512, HIB, harassment, intimidation, bullying.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Cass. Mr. Kim, you're on a roll. Thank you. Any questions, comments on policy revision? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Capello,
Yes.
Mr. Cass,
Yes.
Mr. Kim,
Yes.
Dr. Aruna Jatasan,
Yes.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes. All right, Mr. Kim, finance, please, sir.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I move that we approve tonight Section D, Finance. Number one is a list of checks as seen on the agenda for normal operating expenses. Number two is to approve the 2022-2023 budget as follows. The general fund of $37,302,208. Special revenue fund of $362,982, totaling $37,665,190. Be it further resolved that there should be raised for taxes for general funds of $32,735,008 for the ensuing school year. Be it further resolved that the budget includes a capital reserve withdrawal in the amount of $1.58 million to assist with various school-wide projects as listed in the table of the agenda. Whereas the Board of Education recognizes school staff and board members will incur travel expenses related to and within the scope of their current responsibilities for the travel that promotes the delivery of instruction or furthers the efficient operation of the school district. And whereas New Jersey Administrative Code 6A:23A subchapter 7 requires board members to receive approval of these expenses by a majority of the full voting membership of the board, and staff members to receive prior approval of these expenses by the superintendent and a majority of the full voting membership of the board. And whereas a Board of Education may establish for regular district business travel only an annual school year threshold of $150 per event, where prior board approval shall not be required unless this event threshold for staff members exceeded during July 1st through June 30th, and travel and related expenses not in compliance with NJAC 6A:23A subchapter 7, but deemed by the Board of Education to be necessary and unavoidable as noted on the approved Board of Education out-of-district travel and reimbursement forms. Be it resolved that the Board of Education approves all travel not in compliance with the New Jersey Administrative Code as being necessary and unavoidable as noted on the approved Board of Education out-of-district travel and reimbursement forms. And be it further resolved, the Board of Education includes in the budget travel and related expense reimbursements in accordance with New Jersey Administrative Code to a maximum expenditure of $30,300 all staff and board members for the 2022-2023 school year. The maximum travel expenditure for the 21-22 school year is $41,800, of which $30,924 has been spent and $10,876 is encumbered to date. The school business administrator / board secretary shall track and record these costs to ensure that the maximum amount is not exceeded. Be it further resolved that the Board of Education approve a maximum annual expenditure for professional services in accordance with NJ Administrative Code for the auditor of $32,500, the attorney $85,000, the architect $5,000, and finally in our finance sections numbers 3 and 4 to approve discarding the equipment. Number 3 lists 2 projectors, and number 4 is referencing an attached list. Number 5 is to accept 3 cubic yards of wood chips from the Township of Denville Beautification Committee. Number 6, to approve Raritan Headwaters Waterways programs for the cost of $120. And number 7, to accept a donation of 90 squid from Lund Fisheries in Cape May, New Jersey.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. Thank you, Mr. Capello. Any questions, comments?
Yes, Mr. Capello, I will acknowledge and thank Lund Fisheries for their donation of 90 squids.
I appreciate that, Mr. Kim. I was going to do it if you didn't.
As a side note, I always wondered why I never put that rubberized flooring under my kids' playground, and now I realize why at $120,000. Granted, our play set is not nearly as big, but still. Any questions, comments? Thank you, Mr. Kim, for reading that in. I appreciate it. Roll call, please.
Mr. Capello,
Yes.
Mr. Cass,
Yes.
Mr. Kim,
Yes.
Dr. Arunajatasan,
Yes.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes. All right. Move on to operations. Mr. Cass, would you mind moving us?
Will do. Under operations tonight, we have 2 items, one under transportation, one under building and grounds. Under transportation, I'm asking that the board approve to transport students from the Learner Limited Little Learner facility to the Turtleback Zoo at an hourly rate of $70 per hour per driver on May 24th. Under building and grounds, I'm asking the board to approve use of Lakeview or Riverview for the Denville Township Library Summer Reading Kickoff Program on Sunday, May 22nd, and a usage fee will not be assessed for the use of these facilities.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Cass. Thank you, Mr. Kim. Any questions, comments? I just want to note under buildings and grounds, I appreciate Dr. Forte for bringing it up that that township is always very good to us with using their facilities and working with us on many projects, including Valley View, the office here. So appreciate him for bringing up that we should waive the usage fee for the Denville Township Library Summer Reading Kickoff. And in addition to just how they work with us, it's our students that are benefiting from it. So appreciate you for bringing it up. Roll call, please.
Mr. Capello,
Yes.
Mr. Cass,
Yes.
Mr. Kim,
Yes.
Dr. Arunajatasan,
Yes.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes. And before we go on to go to the cause, I'd like to have Mr. Kim go back and revisit under old business education reports one item, please.
Sure. At this time, we'll come back to old business on section 3, letter B, education reports number 4. I motion that we approve HIB case LV 2122.04.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. Thank you, Mr. Capello. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Capello,
Yes.
Mr. Cass,
Yes.
Mr. Kim,
Yes.
Dr. Arunajatasan,
Yes.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes. All right. And we will move on to good of the cause, committee reports, correspondence, discussion items, and other board meeting highlights. Any suggestions, Dr. Forte? I don't know if you had anything put together yet. Obviously, our budget approval.
Yeah, I have 2. The budget approval with the link to where it is, and then congratulations to Mary Yap for the NOAA. Anybody else? The squids?
The donation for the squids.
Okay. So we'll get those 3 items in. Any other suggestions? Okay. Squid are very important.
You know, I looked it up. It says it's squids, not squid. I thought it seemed weird calling it squids, but it's actually
The
squids.
plural is squid.
Yeah, I Googled it just to double check.
See, we learned something.
I know.
Do we have a connection to Lund Fisheries? They donate every year. Or do we just ask?
So Mrs. Stiles is just has a wide reach. Let me put it to you that way. Everywhere people know of Mrs. Stiles, and yeah, people from Cape May are donating squids to us.
Awesome. I will mention under the two other items under discussion, we've got the Denville Education Foundation golf outing, October 17th. Dr. Forte mentioned in his comments also. And then the school board convention, October 24th, 26th. We talked about considering making the October 10th meeting combined work session, regular session. We'll revisit that as we move forward. I don't think we need to make a decision right now, but we'll talk about that. If you have an opinion on it, shoot me an email and we'll talk about it. Any other items for the good of the cause? Please, Mr. Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I want to thank Damaris and the Business Administrator's Office, Dr. Forte, as well as the rest of the administration, as well as my fellow members of the Finance Committee for the amount of work and time that they put in. I mean, clearly the fact that there was no questions at the end of the presentation is a testament of how well the administration communicates with the board. And I'm always inspired by the constant efforts and passion that everyone has for the district. I mean, constantly finding new funds, new grants, such as the grant for the HVAC system in the schools, which is going to be a great assistance. And yeah, we're always looking to strive to better the district, whether it is through the academics or through as Mr. Cass always says, the importance of the buildings and grounds. And so I want to thank everyone. So thank you all. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. I appreciate you for mentioning that. And I appreciate the Finance Committee too. It's a tremendous amount of work that goes in to get the budget ready. And like you said, I think it's a testament that to the hard work that was put in and the questions that were asked and all your hard work along with the administrators, the fact that we were no questions. So thank you. I did have one other quick comment to make. So first of all, congratulations to our fifth graders at Riverview who completed their LEAD program. I think it was just the week before spring break, right, that they had their graduation. And in addition, I think that same day, the Riverview Annex also unveiled the mosaic that was donated by the Denville Education Foundation. So if you guys haven't seen it, I'll forward you on a video they put together. I'm not sure if that went out yet. Steve, did it?
Yeah, I think it did.
Okay. Great project by Riverview. I'm always impressed with the different projects between the sensory rooms they've done and the mosaics. And like you talked about the painting at Valley View. It's amazing what they do with the buildings. I was just actually over at church yesterday and I parked in the back parking lot and walked through and I forgot about the painting they did on the ground. So they do some really cool stuff at the schools that just makes, especially Riverview Annex, that school has become part of our district. And I know it's hard when you're taking over a building and it takes a little while, but I feel like we've really kind of gotten in there and made it kind of our own. And they've kind of put a lot of different little touches in to make it feel a little bit more special. So I appreciate all the work that both the staff and the Denville Education Foundation have done to help out with that. Any other good of the cause? All right, seeing none, we'll open up our second open public comment section at 8:30 p.m. I have no one in the chambers here, so I will not read the comment, the opening section. Dr. Forte, I don't see anything else that came in on the comment email. Is that correct?
No. I'm sorry. No comments.
Yes, got it. No comments have come in on email and no one here in public. So we're going to close our second open public comment section at 8:30 p.m. also. Do we have a need for a second executive, Dr. Forte?
No, we do not.
Okay, I'll take a motion for adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Capello. Thank you, Mr. Kim. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nays? None. Abstentions? None. We are closed at 8:30 p.m.